Colin Cowie, your name is synonymous with luxury, weddings, high design. You're one of the wedding industry's iconic names that I'm so excited to have you here. So thank you for making time to be here.
So happy to be here.
You have done some of the most breathtaking weddings, probably in history of weddings. I would love for you just to share with everyone your backstory. How did you get into weddings, and especially at the scale that you're at?
Oh, it's interesting because I was living in South Africa in the height of apartheid in the mid-'80s. I didn't believe in the political system. I didn't think it was right, and I wanted to travel and live somewhere and work somewhere where it was the same weather, the same language, and I set my sights on California. And in a very, very short period of time, I started a small catering company, and that led from one thing to the next thing. And then all of a sudden, one day, I'd been teaching cooking classes at the Beverly Hills High School adult program. And there was a lady whose husband was the president of Playboy. And they asked me if I would consult on the food. And I went and I had a look what they were doing. And this was at the beautiful Tudor mansion that Hugh Hefner lived in Holmby Hills. Magnificent property.
It's iconic LA property. Yes.
Iconic. And they were going to have stations with fajitas and Mexico with a silver lame ceiling. I said, no, if I were to do this, this is what I would do. And I told the story, and then someone more important came down. And by the time I told the story 3 times, I was sitting in front of Hugh Hefner with all his pajamas on. And I ended up doing that wedding and didn't realize how famous the world's most famous bachelor was. Because it was all pre-social media. Mm-hmm. In fact, most of these people listening, watching probably don't even remember the yellow pages. But I got press books that were thick as 2 yellow pages stacked one on top of another. And it was incredible. It was kind of the beginning of
that was the
Mr.
first
Wedding. That was the first big wedding.
And also the biggest.
And the biggest.
Yeah.
And it was amazing because I did it in 12 and a half weeks.
Wow.
And I was driving to Palm Springs to have people make statues and columns out of white plaster that were replicated from the house. I just really went to town on this one. Mm-hmm. And I think it remains probably one of my best productions.
So did you have a background in design, or you just had a budget that you went
I've
wild with?
I've always been gifted with design. I can walk into a space, close my eyes, I dream about it, I see it 3-dimensionally, what you smell, touch, taste, see, and hear, and then it starts to build, right? Mm-hmm. So I've always been able to make beauty and find beauty in life and look for it, and it's been my inspiration. So, and also coming from a family that entertained fabulously. Growing up in Central Africa and Zambia, we had one hotel, one country club that we belonged to, and you wouldn't put foot anywhere else. So we entertained in our homes. So from a very early age, I was taught how to make people feel welcome and how to present beautifully. And when I got to Los Angeles, there were all these big mansions, and there were women with walk-in refrigerators who were eating in restaurants 5 nights a week and didn't know how to entertain in their homes. Mm-hmm. So my original idea was, let me demystify the whole idea of what entertaining was about. Mm-hmm. So I actually really called my business in those days Colin Cowie Lifestyle, because it was more than just weddings and parties and events. It was inspiring these people to live charming, fabulous, wonderful lives.
And how long were you in California before
So I was in Los Angeles. I lived there for 13 years, and it was kind of the beginning of the wedding industry. There were no really wedding planners at that stage, There were a few of us that were doing things, but a wedding typically was planned by a mother, the social secretary, somebody printed an invitation, they got a band or a DJ, they called a caterer and flowers, and those were weddings.
Yeah, and you had 2 colors to choose from. Is it
rental company.
Yes.
Oh my God. They were all polyester tablecloths. There was more plastic in the tablecloths than in my credit cards. So I started going to the fabric stores and upholstery stores and buying fabrics and making all my own overlays. In those days, you couldn't rent a bar height. All the tables were 30 inches. So I took 18 inches of PVC piping and put them on the legs.
Oh my gosh.
To give yourself 42-inch bars, right? It was crazy. Started covering swimming pools and really built a lot of creative things out of nowhere.
It is interesting that I think part of the reason why the wedding industry exploded, call it 2000s,
yes,
was I think because all of these women who got married in the 80s who had no choices right? There were no choices. It was this color, that color, chicken or fish for the reception. Now their daughters are getting married, and it's a whole different game.
It's the most highly specialized industry in the world today.
Yeah.
And you see the connectivity because of social media and how we share. One thing I used to love, I've traveled 16.5 million miles around the world and visited almost 100 countries. I used to love to go to other countries and see what they were doing, what their rituals were, what type of fabrics they were using, and how they would plan and design their weddings. And now, because we're all inspired by one another, the world has become very homogenized as we become so globalized that what you're seeing in Brazil, you're seeing in India, and you're seeing the same thing in England, London, Paris, New York, and Rome. Right? So I think that's the kind of the downside as to how we become so
everything's become a Pinterest board where it's like all mushing together, which is where I think that kind of innate talent that you spoke about, when you walk in, you just have a sense of putting all these elements together. Because it has become, with social media, that people choose a certain aesthetic and they want to recreate. Right. But something you're known for is creating spaces that have never been dreamed up before.
Well, I always look at a space and think, this has been the factory, like, for instance, some of our favorite spaces in New York, whether it's the Grill, that fabulous Mies van der Rohe building where that Philip Johnson did the interior of, or the Rainbow Room in the New York Public Library. The first thing I do is look at it and say, how could we use this in a way that it hasn't been used before? And I think, that's the fun part about design. Design is only really one part of this business. What we see on Instagram is like a part of it. But I think what sets us apart, and one of the things that we really focus on, is guest experience. It's how you bring it alive. And I think that's what's really important with a wedding today. It's one thing to make it look a certain way, but it's like, how do we bring it alive, give it a soul, give it a spirit, make sure that people have a great time, they get everything in measured doses. And I think timing is maybe one of the most important things at a wedding today. It's the one thing that doesn't cost a cent. Right. But how many times have we gone to a wedding before and the bride kept you waiting a half an hour before she came down the aisle? Or the cocktail reception was 2 hours because the bride and groom decided to go to the beach and do a photo shoot, and you left there drinking, right? And then you've been inside the reception tent and you've been there for 4 hours and there's no sign of a cake, right? And you go home feeling tired, bored, and drunk, right?
Or sometimes hungry.
That's why I have this pact with every bride that I work with, that she'll go down the aisle no more than 15 minutes after the printed invitation time. And I've never had a late bride. Right? I do cocktails for 45 minutes because by the time we get you moving to the next place, right, that's an hour. And if you look at your watch, I've lost you. Right? I like to serve a dinner without speeches or toasts.
Thank God. Dinner. Thank God, because this is something that I feel very passionately about, that the speeches and the toasts at a wedding, I don't feel that is for the guests. That experience, it's a great thing.
I like to do it in 90 minutes because that's why you have the rehearsal dinner the night before. That's when you should. That's Smaller, when the third grade teacher can get up and make her toast. Yes. When the seventh bridesmaid can make her toast. And it's kind of, just being very honest, it's not that interesting to everyone.
It's not interesting.
You need two or three good speeches maximum, and that's it.
It actually, I think, drags down the entire evening. Yeah. And I was making a joke earlier about it feels so ceremonial. Sit up, sit down, go to the dance floor, come back to eat. And when you have that type of regimen, right, or that schedule for a wedding reception, I think it kills the vibe. Completely. So, how do you get someone back on the dance floor after you make them sit for a toast or a meal?
And you got to pack all these things and it's stop, start. I like to do 1 or 2 speeches or toast, and I think, if I can make you cry and laugh in 3 minutes, why should you speak for 10?
Totally.
Right?
I love that.
And I think because I've done so much in television and speaking in sound bites, you learn to put it all into a small amount of time, right? So I think a well-rehearsed speech is a very good way to enter an event. The moment someone pulls out 5 pieces of paper, right, we know that we're in for a long-winded speech and toast.
So are you making whoever's giving speeches, are they practicing in front of you? How are you?
No, we always say to them, I always say, listen, you really don't need to do the long toast right now. I mean, if you're going to speak, I think 3 minutes, you're the father of the bride, 5 minutes max. And most people get it.
Yeah.
They realize. And that's why you have a rehearsal dinner or a welcome dinner 1 night or 2 nights before. And if it's a destination weekend, you can squeeze one or two in at a lunch or at a golf game if you needed to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
but it's all about timing, because if you front load this really well and nobody looks at their clock and things just magically happen, you'll dance to 1 o'clock in the morning.
And everyone's having the best time of their life and they can't believe it's over.
Yeah. And it's the timing. It didn't cost one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's how we make you feel. I always say when in service delivery, right, it's all about guest experience and how we make you feel. It's like looking for that opportunity to keep it moving, to keep the energy there. Keep it engaging.
So timing is a big element of that. Design obviously is that first wow impact, right? Timing. What are some other elements that go into your formula?
Oh, it's very simple. And if you want to create experience, you need to focus on the 5. What you smell, touch, taste, see, and hear. And use those elements to take guests on a journey with a very carefully thought at a beginning, a middle, and an end. So when you're in a peak, when do the shots come out onto the dance floor in the big ice molds, whatever you need to do. And I think that's how you get to orchestrate great energy.
Amazing. And you've been doing this for so long. I'm wondering, do you have a number? Have you counted and tallied all the events that you've done? I mean, it must be in the thousands.
It's crazy. It's not so much the number. I mean, you just look at the names. I'm going to be celebrating 40 years of being in this country, in this business, in September this year. And sitting with my teams, we went back and wrote every single celebrity that we've worked with, every single headliner, act and performance that we've worked with, all the different countries that we've worked with, all the different brands that we've worked with. And I looked at this thing, oh my God, I should be 3,000 years old. How is it all possible? And I'm just as excited today about what we're doing next week.
So now, how many events do you typically do a year? Because I'm imagining these are not small scale; they're large production. How much capacity do you have to do, or are you just selective?
It's interesting. It's very interesting that you say that, because the world has changed a lot. Okay, the size of the wedding industry, right, in terms of the amount of brides getting married, right, it has not gotten that much bigger, right? Mm-hmm. It's pretty much the same. What has grown is the amount of event planners and the size of the service delivery in the industry. Mm-hmm. Right? I remember 15, 20 years ago, I picked who I wanted to work with, literally, because there was a never-ending pipeline. Mm-hmm. Now we're all competing for the same amount of brides. Mm-hmm. It's what we call the red ocean strategy, right? It's a huge amount of people looking for the same amount of work. So, my sweet spot is we have 2 different products. There's Team Cowie, which my team does, which is it's the opportunity to have a piece of the Colin Cowie brand without spending, the big ticket number. Mm-hmm. And then there's Signature Colin. Those are the events that I'm involved in, where I oversee every single detail.
Wow. And
I would imagine we probably do about 8 to 10 Signature Colin and probably about 10 to 15 Team Cowie. And not all of that's weddings. A lot of those are product launches. We do
brand events.
We do brand events. We do activations, milestone celebrations, maybe 1 or 2 bar mitzvahs every couple of years.
It is true. I think when I first started Love Really, gosh, it's like 12 years ago now. It was around the time of this emergence of wedding blogs, right? So we had magazines, wedding magazines, and then we had wedding blogs. And now, of course, we have social media, right? Which is the evolution of it. But the explosion of wedding planners coming onto the scene, I think it can be tied to Jennifer Lopez and the movie The Wedding Planner. Because around that time, I don't know when it came out, early 2000s, I think it romanticized the idea of being a wedding planner.
It did.
And women would plan their wedding. They would get married and they'd be part of the planning process. And they're like, oh, I quite like this. I think I can do this.
Yeah, and not only that's for sure, but so many brides got married and figured they loved what they did. They've got organizational skills. Yep. The next minute, they had pretty pictures, a website, and they were your competition.
Yep.
Yeah. I did Jennifer Lopez's last wedding, incidentally.
Comes full circle. And that one was the one with Ben Affleck?
Affleck,
I remember it was like a big thing in People.
Yeah, it was a huge wedding, and it was in Georgia in the middle of summer when the Department of Tourism said, this is the least opportunity that you should go to Georgia for because of the bugs, because of the weather, because of the humidity, because of the rain, and God bless her.
Why did they choose that?
Because that's the home. This was a development that was being developed 20 years ago, and they were going to be kind of the face of, and that's where they fell in love the first time.
Oh, wow.
So they wanted to go back and recreate that. And bless her, she had a day, it was 72 degrees, not a cloud in the sky. It rained every day before, it's probably rained every day since then.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've done a lot of, I mean, Jennifer Lopez is one of the most, I would say, well-known names. You've done probably a laundry list of them.
Yeah.
Are there any weddings when you look back in your 40-year career that stand out, whether it's a celebrity or just one that you still like think about?
Oh my God, there's so many of them, you know, and
give us the highlights.
I always take the Swiss approach and say it's the next one. Right?
Yeah.
Because that's kind of where your creative energy is focused on. And I think, you know, we work so hard in this industry, you never take time to sit back and look at what you've done, right? Until I was looking at this whole idea now of all this body of work over the last, 39 and a half years. It's insane. I think one of the best weddings was my own wedding, which was in South Africa, just before the pandemic, 02/22/20, a great date.
Great date. And right before.
Like right before.
Like 2 weeks before the world was shut down.
We threw this, 8-day wedding in South Africa with 176 people, went on safari for 3 days, flew everyone to Cape Town for 3 days, then went to the vineyards and really had an all-nighter. I figured.
How could you plan your own wedding? This is what I want to understand, because I have been engaged for 5 years and I'm on my second baby. I have not planned the wedding because I am like paralyzed
Okay,
with
so one
so
of the
many
interesting
ideas.
things.
How did you do it?
So one of the interesting things in this business, and I get asked this a lot of, how do you scale, right? So you have to replace yourself. You have to figure out how can you design and walk away and have all the right SOPs in place, have the right teams in place. I always just say that I'm just a good idea without the teams of people that work with me. And once I hand it off, I'm invited to a lot of the weddings that we go to, and my team know, if I'm seated at a table,
you become a guest.
I'm a guest, 100% I'm a guest. God help anyone if I have to get up in the middle of the dinner, right? Because they're also taught to look for opportunity, When I walk into a room, the first thing I see is what's not working. I can spot an empty glass from 100 yards. I can tell you if the light is too light, or if the music is too bright, or the air conditioning is too warm or too cold, right? Because that's what we do. It's guest experience. It's how we make you feel. So the team is taught to do those things as well. You're constantly looking for opportunity, and you're constantly looking at being ready for what's going to happen in 20 minutes' time. So I had a blast at my wedding. I never did a thing. I sat back and enjoyed the ride with my 176 favorite friends from 5 continents.
And did you have a clear vision of what you wanted for you? And how did you sift through, or is it just came to you?
It came to me, as it does every time.
You weren't that attached to it. It was just easy.
Well, I kind of knew what I wanted,
Okay.
and
the knowing what you want though is really impressive, because I'm like totally blocked. And Jove Meyer, I think he's actually on his honeymoon right now. He's a planner here in New York. When he's now married, but when 2 years ago, he came on here and he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do for my wedding. And when I talked to other planners,
I remember having that discussion with him 2 years ago.
It's like, you don't know what you want to do. So it's impressive that it was just so, again, after 40 years, you can do it like that. But not to be blocked is really impressive.
I'm a ruthless editor.
Okay,
when in doubt, throw it out.
Okay.
Right? So it's all about, with so much chatter in the world, it's about knowing what to say no to, right? And then when you're left with the right ingredients, it kind of falls into place. And I think every wedding is different because we're your storyteller, right? You come to us with Pinterest and pictures and images and things that you've collected along the way. It's our job to edit them and say, this works, this doesn't work, or we can maybe incorporate that in Friday night or Sunday brunch if we're going to do one. And that's how we tell your story. And a lot of the time, the venue, the place, the time of the year, the personalities help you tell that story, because different things are important and different to other people. Some people it's about the music, some people it's about the flowers, some people it's about the food, and everyone's like hyper-focused on one thing. I like to focus on all of those, right? Because that's what the maestro does, right? Is to find the very best and then to tell it in a very intelligent way that makes sense. So people, I get it, I understand.
After being in this industry and creating trends, seeing them come in and leave, a lot of creatives don't even like the word trends, right? But you just create them. You've done that, right? So maybe you don't follow them because you're the creative, but what have you seen come into the industry? that you loved, didn't love? Like, things have come in and out.
Well, I think, as you said a few seconds ago, trend doesn't really work. I think it's kind of where the industry moves, because if it's a trend, it's only here for a short period of time. But I think the industry has taken us in certain directions. I think the whole idea of the bride becoming so self-obsessed with the images, right? And the photo shoot before and middle and after, and she's changing 4 times, and the hair's up and the hair's down.
There's a lot of fashion changes that's happening.
There's so much happening, so much coordinating. How are we going to change from this outfit to this outfit, that? It's a lot of work versus going to have fun. So that's one that I find is like gone to the next level completely. I think the obsession with the images is another one that's kind of off whack as well. But by and large, I think the industry has gotten better and gotten more refined, because I think, our pencils are all sharpened because we're all inspired by one another. Right? And years ago, there were just a few of us at the table. There's magnificent, tremendous talent out there. And I look at these things on Instagram, I don't even know half these people, and they're turning out world-class global fabulousness. Right?
Oh, a lot of that, I would say, was inspired by you and the work that you did. You set the bar.
Yeah. Well, and it was really fun, because I was just in the Middle East twice actually in the last 2 months. But in the real beginning, there was no infrastructure there. So we were all flown in from either London or New York to go and create these events for them.
And fly everything in as well.
And fly everything. I remember one day flying 4 747 jumbo jets, and I said to the client, I need $5 million to get all this stuff there. It was insane, right? And now you go there, and it's interesting to see how the Middle East is far more savvy in terms of what they're doing, in terms of labor, technology, the budget, the never-ending pipeline of work that they've got coming down the line. It's extraordinary quite to see that what the level is there.
Are you doing a lot of work over there now?
I'm working on a very nice project there now, yes.
Amazing. Yeah. I imagine you've had some pretty incredible budgets. Is there one budget that just blew your mind? What's the biggest budget that you have done, I guess is the question.
$25 million.
Wow.
And quite a few of them. I remember doing one in the Middle East where it was a Middle Eastern wedding. It was 5 hours, $25 million. It's a $5 million an hour burn.
Wow.
It was incredible.
And where does the budget go? Is it decor? I mean,
everything. When you're doing something for a royal wedding and it's 2,500 guests, right? And so you're building from scratch a 75,000 square foot custom multi-tiered platform where you've got 1.2 miles of gilded railings, you've got probably 7 miles of electrical cable, 2 million blossoms, customized tables, place settings, all custom built. I mean, it's a huge undertaking. And then on the flip side of that, the opening of Palm Island, Atlantis in Dubai, that was another $25 million event. But now $25 million today is not that much. You hear brides are doing a $60 million wedding and an $80 million wedding. It's unbelievable.
It's wild. Yeah. It's like
a $100 million wedding, which is the Ambani wedding, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I love about this business. While nothing is recession-proof, weddings are recession-resistant.
Yeah.
Because love's never going to go out of style and you can't switch it off. Which is kind of interesting when you see what's happening in our industry right now. Our industry right now is a little slow because of 2 reasons. One is what's happening with the current administration, obviously, and financially around the world, and markets and tariffs and chaos. But as we came out of the pandemic, we were in this wedding revolution, right? It was phenomenal.
The boom.
Thursday was the new Saturday. Right? That's for 3 years you weren't able to have a wedding. Right? There were a couple of micro weddings along the way, but all of a sudden people were in catch-up mode. So for the next 3 years, it was an insane amount of work. Then during those 3 years during the pandemic, people weren't dating or falling in love, right? So you had to wait another 3 years to catch up. So that combined with where we're in right now is showing a bit of a slowness in the market.
It is really interesting that people were not meeting during the pandemic.
They weren't, correct. They weren't falling in love or dating.
Yes, and actually quite a few relationships ended, right? Because people were stuck together and they decided, hey, you're not a fit.
Not going to work.
Yeah, it's true. It is interesting how the demand pent up exploded and now it's kind of stabilized. Yeah. When you think about what gets you excited? I know you said your next event. Is there anything that you haven't done that you really want to do, or where you haven't planned that you want to do an event?
No. I always kind of like what comes down the pipeline. I mean, I've pretty much,
God, I love it.
I've seen and been and done a lot. But that said, there's nothing jaded in that answer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm as excited today. We're working on a beautiful wedding right now at the Hotel de Cap, which I think is one of the greatest venues in the world to work in. I always tell the bride, it's going to take you 6.5 minutes to walk down the aisle.
Wow.
So enjoy it. It's a great place to work. The first 3 opening lines when you work there are, there's no negotiation in the price.
Mm-hmm.
You work with you work with the people we tell you to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And if any time along the way we don't think it lives up to the standard, the elegance of the brand and the hotel, we can get rid of you and keep your money.
Wow.
There are not too many places in the world that are able to boast that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's probably the most enviable walk in the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, when's that wedding happening?
September.
Wow, cannot wait to see that.
Yeah.
So with a lot of the clients that you work with, because they are so high profile, obviously a lot of the work gets shared in the media. But are there a lot of weddings that you're not able to actually ever share with the world?
Some of my most beautiful work, I've never been able to share an image.
Wow.
But I think we overexposed. We've
Today.
shared too much.
Yes, it's true.
It's kind of like the girl who's wearing the short dress with the low back, with the boobs out and the high heels and everything plumped, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's too obvious.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of nice when there's 2 out of 4 and there's a bit of mystery left behind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this idea of sharing has gone out of control to the degree that it's also affected a lot of your very wealthy people, a lot of high-profile people don't want people or the rest of the world to know and to see how they're entertained. So we do a lot of work under NDA that nobody ever gets to see or hear about. So we kind of live in those moments.
What is interesting is you're 100% right. We are overexposed. We overshare. That privacy has actually become a
the
luxury.
new luxury.
Yeah.
Privacy is the new luxury.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people have no social media at their weddings, right? And it's just
Are they taking
thing.
phones and putting them in those little lock boxes?
We've done that many times. I kind of think you need to be able to trust your friends. These are your friends, right? There's not your colleagues. It's not an industry event. An industry event, I would say, take the phones because we're protecting some form of IP, right? Intellectual property. But I think at a wedding, I think just make it very clear that phones are not, and please don't share with anyone. You put it in the welcome package, you put a note, you have it on a little silver frame where people are walking by when they check in, and just make sure it's done. And I think a lot of people today are really enjoying being at an event when they're not sitting there looking at this.
Oh, there's nothing more obnoxious than when you see a bride walking down the aisle and everyone has their phones out.
It's terrible.
Have
and
you
the worst is when Mrs. Smith is in row number 4, 2 from the left with the iPad. Okay, try getting rid of that in post.
It's true. I don't know if you've seen any photos from like a concert, like Coachella or whatever. There's no one's dancing. All it is a sea of iPhones. And we've turned into this society that we need to record it. Are we even going to look at it later? Like that, I don't even know. What are we doing with these videos, right? When you're there in the moment, we've forgotten how to experience real life and connect.
And it's also kind of this behavior, instinct, and pattern. The moment one phone comes out, someone feels, if I don't shoot that, I'm missing out. They must be shooting something worth meaningfully.
And then it becomes a trigger.
And then next minute, it's a domino effect. You've got 150 phones in front of you.
Yeah.
So I love the apps. And you said one thing we should leave behind. The phones. I think the phones kill the wedding. They really do. Everyone is so obsessed with taking pictures of themselves. And the moment you take the phones out of the equation, everyone has so much more fun.
So much more fun. It's an elevated experience.
Completely, totally.
I even find my single girlfriends, when they meet someone who doesn't have social media, it's like times 10. Like they've all of a sudden been elevated because they're not someone who's posting their entire life online, that it's kind of become like a rarity to meet someone who doesn't have their entire world.
Look at Timothy Chalamet and Kylie Jenner, right? That's why their relationship works. He doesn't appear on any of her social media. He's not in the Kardashians. She doesn't post anything about him because he's not interested in any of that. He wants to be the artist. And her business is very completely the
exposed.
opposite.
Yeah.
Yes. I think you have to pick a lane.
100%. And it's it's definitely become a problem with weddings that I've seen, even with vendors, right? Like the sharing of images. Like I imagine, well, when you're producing stuff and people are working for you, I imagine they're not allowed to post. How do you control that?
No,
Vendors.
First of all,
well, and you have a team that has worked with you for years.
Yes. And then we say once we've posted, we'll make sure that we tag you. But that doesn't give permission for everyone else to go and repost it. There's a wedding going on right now where every single vendor is reposting the same things. I'm looking at the reel. It's the same wedding coming up and up and up and up again. It's like this is the last chance, the last hurrah.
It's definitely created this like whirlpool. I think that has, and then now entering into TikTok. I think what's really interesting is now you see all these brides sharing their experiences from their perspective. And I think it's great to hear people's different price points and ideas of how they're accomplishing their weddings. I also think it ends up becoming a problem because now there's a little bit of misinformation out there, right? That anyone can pick up a phone, give you advice about what to do, and you think that's the new standard, and it's actually not
it's
true.
It's the same thing. You can get a Prius, you can get a Hyundai, you can get a Mercedes-Benz, you can get a Maybach, you can get a Bugatti, right? You've got to choose which car you want to drive in, right? It's not the same price for all of them. They each give you different experiences.
It's true.
Yeah. There's no one size fits all.
And you mentioned no negotiating for that venue that you're working at.
Yeah.
Recently, there's been a controversy about like how to negotiate with vendors. I'm so curious. I mean, obviously, no one's negotiating with you. Like, you're kind of the upper echelon.
No, everybody negotiates.
Okay.
Everybody negotiates, and it depends how.
How do you do it tactfully? Yes.
How to do it tactfully. Someone will come and say, I had a huge, big celebrity who said to me, we would like a break financially. And I said, well, he said, well, it's a big deal for you to be doing our event. I said, yes, but I signed an NDA saying that I can't say anything about it. So one's got to give, right? Yeah. If I can publicize it, then I'm willing to talk about the price or not, right? But I think this whole idea of price cutting in our industry is a very slippery slope. Because once you go down, there's no way to bring it back.
It's a race to the bottom.
It's a race to the bottom. So I can offer you signature Colin, right? And if you don't want signature Colin, I can offer you Team Cowie. That's my negotiation, basically. And I run a very transparent business. It's a fee, a percentage, and you see every single thing in between. So it just, it just creates a good environment to have good financial discussions. And the other thing is that if the client wants to spend 3x, we come in at 3x, right? If it's 3x and a half, here's your budget for 3x. These 5 items didn't make it into your budget, right? Which one of them would you like to include? And I think if you do it that way and you show tremendous respect for other people's money, invariably they either pick 1, 3, and 5 or all 5 of them. But this whole idea of, and I've heard it from a lot of people that I've lost weddings to, okay, because every client today who's interviewing speaks to 10 different people. Doesn't matter who you are, what your history is, how many books you wrote, what your name is, they're speaking to 10 different people. And the moment someone says, tell me what it's going to cost right now for me to go to close the deal with you, and they take a reduction in their fees, it's bad for all of us in the industry, right? So it becomes a slippery slope. It's very difficult to go up the hill because you've now set a standard that this is what I charge. And if in your community you charge this for this person, they told their friend and they told their next friend, you've just lowered the bar.
It's interesting that even in luxury, that ends up being a factor, because I think you'll hear the same thing for event planners and florists who are 3 years into their career, who are just starting at that price point too, that there's someone who just started yesterday who will cut the price, and it's not good for the community. It's not good for
and also a lot
it's service business too. At the end of the day, it's people's time.
Look, it's a big business today, right? When someone's spending 7 figures with you, there's a lot of accountability involved as to not only what you're going to design and how pretty you're going to make it, but how I'm going to manage your money and your resources, and how accountable am I going to be to be able to come in accurately, on time and on budget. It's a real business. A lot of people sell services today that they don't really are able to back because they're just very new to the game. And it takes a while. Usually you start with a smaller wedding, a medium-sized wedding, a bigger wedding, and you learn along the way. I remember when I first started doing television, when I first started doing weddings, I made so many mistakes because there was no textbook, right? So, and you learn, and every time you fall, you get up, and as long as you don't make the same mistake twice.
Okay, so what were some of those mistakes? Give me the big mistakes.
Oh God, not having a backup generator. I remember once doing a big party, and then the generator blew, and the next minute there were candles in the room, and that was it. And someone had to take a belt out of my car to repair a generator, and 20 minutes later we were going again. I mean, not having a plan B for weather. I mean, there's just so many things that can go wrong. Not having double-checked your rental order, and half the dance floor doesn't come, or you didn't get the coffee.
Party.
I mean, and I was very creative, and I wasn't that organized when I got started. I'm now ridiculously. That would have been the best TV show, me starting out. Okay? That would have been Reality 101.1. Now we've got SOPs for if we're working in Mexico, if we're working in the Bahamas, if we're working in a hotel, and we generate these books that are 1 inch thick that has got every single last detail involved, every diagram, every contact person, every timeline, so that if God forbid I handed that book to someone else, they'd be able to run that event.
Yeah.
And I think because it's specialized, and if you're working on this level, if you're not that organized, you cannot deliver that quality or that type of experience.
Loverly plans events for just our community and our brides, and at my engagement party, when my rentals arrived, just the most rookie mistake, because and I had a planner. Yeah. She's like, just check the rentals, make sure the right amount of plates showed up, etc. And I just checked the box like I did it, and I didn't. And then on the day, we didn't have enough dinner plates. Yeah. They had sent more dessert plates, and I remember being like, "That's on me. Yeah. I totally made that mistake." And you have to be meticulous. There's not one thing that you can just be like, it's fine.
I remember doing Lisa Kudrow's wedding from Friends, okay, and it was at a ranch just outside of Malibu, Los Angeles, and the classical musician, the flautist, Kazuki Miyoshi was her name, went to a different venue, okay, and I didn't realize this until I realized, oh my God, where's Kazuka? And I remember I had a Kenny G tape, because I'd just done his wedding 3 weeks before, of the wedding song. These were cassettes in those days, right? And I had more cassettes in the car, and it was a Jewish wedding, and I found one from the Higher Calling, which was a gospel choir, and there was one song that had no Jesus in it, okay? So I said on the walkie-talkie, and I'm standing there with a ghetto blaster and a microphone, everything cued to take this cassette out and put the next cassette in. And I said on the walkie-talkie, I said, when you hear the first music, send the bridesmaids and send them quick. Okay, and the maid of honor had like 10 yards to go. And I just thought, I'll wing the next song. It was, Yes, Jesus Loves Me, at a Jewish wedding. Okay. And then there was a woman by the name of Charlie Genet who was supposed to sing. And she's a fabulous vocalist, but she was blind, but she did the blues, and she sang like nobody else, but she relied on her husband to get her there. And the bride came to me and said to me, where's Charlie Genet? This was a different wedding, actually. This was Kathy Kaler, the fitness guru. And the bride said to me, where is Charlie Genet? I said, well, Charlie never does the first set. She only sings the second set. I said, with such confidence, she knew not to question me. So they played the first set, and then I see this car with the dust coming in the background at 100 miles an hour, and the bride said to me, as the second set was in, where's Charlie? I said, Charlie does the second song of the second set. And I swear, as she arrived, there she was, and I pushed her through to get her onto the stage, and she had bougainvillea thorns attached to the leg. I gave her the microphone. I said, sing. I said, see, there she is. Well, but those are the things that happened, right? And you think on your feet.
But you're doing a service, though, because you don't want the bride to stress.
No, not at all.
On the day of, you don't want them thinking about anything.
I'll figure it out. It's like playing Russian roulette.
Wow, that's incredible. And now, with everything, being like at the level that it is, I imagine with your SOPs, you're not running into those issues anymore.
No, because I also have a highly skilled team of extraordinary professionals that work with me.
How big is your team?
We have 18 people.
Wow. Right. And then I'm sure on event production days, are there like hundreds of people
hundreds
there?
Of people, yeah. Absolutely. But, full-time producers, in-house art department, IT, so we can really support everyone in a big way. And the teams, different teams work together on different projects depending on who's available. And there's such great competition between them to be the best of what they can, that the bar just gets higher and higher, and the quality of what we do gets better and better.
I want you to talk a little bit about how you became so famous with all of these wedding shows. And how did that first thing happen where, like, when they came to you with the first show, like, what was that like and where were you at in your career?
Oh, there were so many of them, but I remember it started off with local television, and then I started doing a lot of national television, and then, there'd be the wedding special. Could you do the wedding in a week? So I'd do that for CBS, and then NBC would say, would I do wedding in a month for them? And then it just got very, very wedding orientated.
You've had a couple of your own shows.
Yeah, and then along the way, I then became the correspondent for lifestyle and entertaining for CBS. So I did 8 years on the CBS show. And then I did 8 years on the Today Show, morning segments. And then in between that, I had my own show for 5 seasons, Everyday Elegance, with Colin Cowie. And then I did Race to the Altar when the first reality shows started. And I've done a lot in weddings and television. I mean, there were so many different series and seasons for a long time.
Yeah.
But it was fun, You think on your feet. Rob and Amber did their wedding, the reality wedding of putting their wedding together. Remember the winners of Survivor and The Amazing Race. Yeah.
Actually, you and I met maybe 8 years ago on TV. This is how we connected. I think it was CBS.
It was CBS. Wasn't it Bloomberg?
It was some
CNBC.
CNBC. Yeah, CNBC. Yeah. So I had just started Loverly, and as a tech platform, helping people plan their weddings, I got invited to do this power pitch where I got to pitch my idea for Loverly of, the DIY platform, do it yourself. And this is right around the time that Pinterest started, and we had a very inspiration-focused tool. And you were one of the judges, and so was another Silicon Valley investor and a third guest. I don't know. And I was nervous when I saw that you were one of the judges. I'm like, oh my God, we have Colin Cowie. Okay. So, and I came on there, I did the pitch. I gave my best 60-second pitch. And you gave the signal that you would
endorsed it.
Yeah, you endorsed it, and it actually unlocked an investment from me from the other
I don't know why we're drinking water. We should be drinking champagne.
Exactly, and it put us on the map. So that was really fun. But I remember at the time being like, we were DIY, we're tech, and you were always at this elevated level. And even in the industry, though, you've had a reputation of being someone who gives back to the community and is always into educating and
love to do that. And that's through the books. I mean, the last book I did was The Gold Standard, giving your customers what they didn't know they want. My first business book. But it was the 11th book. But I love to share, and I believe that we don't own any of these ideas, right? We're just conduits of them. And the more generous we are, the more we give them, the bigger your platform to give becomes, right? So I think once you hold on to something, you get stuck. Right? But if you can realize that the more I give, the more I get given to give. And it's a philosophy that I've had from day one. I love to share because I know that the more I do, the more I'm inspired. And I've kind of been able to keep that going, between that, books, and all the other things we've done in media.
I mean, I think that formula has worked for you because as you put out beauty into the world, so much has come back to you. And it's been so impressive. And I'm so honored to have you here and sharing with our Loverly audience and have it come full circle where we're in a studio together in real life. Because I think when we first met, it was behind 2 different television screens.
It's amazing. And congratulations to you. You've done such an extraordinary job. You've given a great voice to the industry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This has been the Loverly Wedding Podcast. We are hosted by Kelly Khalil, produced by Natasha Barkman, Kayla Fitzgerald, and Jennifer Alvarado. Watch the podcast on YouTube by subscribing to our channel, and you can follow and listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, and every major RSS feed.